Everybody to this evening's meeting for the joint meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee and the Salem Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee. And I'd like to call the meeting to order, and could we start with a roll call, please?
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Member Kieser.
Present.
Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Nanke.
Here.
Member McCoy.
Here.
Member Osick.
Here.
Member Hoy.
Here.
Member Cook.
Here.
Member Lewis.
Here.
Member Nordyke. Absent. Member Kylowite.
Here.
Member Bailey.
Here.
Member Moore Green.
Here.
Member Bassett.
Here.
Member Hazlitt.
Here.
Member Bergman.
Here.
And Member Milton.
That's a yes.
Okay. If I could all ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is the acceptance of the minutes of our May 3rd meeting. I'd entertain a motion of approval.
I move approval of minutes of the May 3rd meeting.
Put your mic up.
Member McCoy, could you speak into the microphone?
You know what you said. You heard me. I move approval of the minutes for the May 3rd Budget Committee meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Member McCoy and seconded by Member Osick. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. All right, the handout materials. Officer Jacobs, if you could go through those with us.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Good evening, Budget Committee members. Before I review the handout materials this evening, I would like to acknowledge Bob Bailey and Jan Kaluwite. With this evening's meeting being the final scheduled meeting for the Budget Committee in fiscal year 2017, Bob and Jan will complete their terms as committee members. Bob has served since February 2012, and Jan began his tenure on the committee in November 2010. I would like to extend my appreciation for their service in the thoughtful and well-prepared manner in which they have approached this responsibility. Thank you, Bob and Jan. On to our handout material. Item 4A, this item records the actions of the Budget Committee through May 3rd, 2017. Our focus this evening is on the wish list items, which are noted in more detail with Agenda Item 6A. Item 4B is the current fiscal year quarterly financial summary for both the City of Salem and the Urban Renewal Agency for the period ending March 31st, 2017. These items were placed on your desk so that we could provide you with color copies. Item 4C is correspondence from Jocelyn Pollock regarding the West Salem Branch Library. And now I'm going to begin grouping items. Items 4D, 4G, and 4H are items of correspondence from the North Lancaster Neighborhood Association and residents of that area regarding McKay School Park. Item 4E is information related to the city's PERS rates and costs. Item 4F is correspondence from the Association of Local Government Auditors regarding the city auditor wish list item. Items 4I from Steve Bergman, 4J from Derek Milton, and 4M from Sharon Blasi also relate to this wish list item. Item 4K is correspondence from Michael Livingston and Sarah Owens, and item 4L is correspondence from Woody Dukes opposing wish list funding for a homeless initiative coordinator position with the Mid-Willamette Homeless Initiative Task Force. The remaining items in the agenda packet are staff reports related to specific actions required of the Budget Committee this evening, including approval of the City and Urban Renewal Agency ad valorem property tax levies and recommendation of the City and Urban Renewal Agency budgets to the City Council and Agency Board, respectively. Thank you.
Any questions for Budget Director Jacobs? All right, thank you. We move to agenda item 5, which is public testimony. We've allowed up to 30 minutes for testimony. I wanted to remind everybody it's 3 minutes, and after 2 minutes, the yellow light comes on. After 3 minutes, the red light comes on. After 3.5 minutes, there's a little shock. No.
So we're going to start. We have a tandem team this evening that wants to talk with Jillian Taylor and Anna Emerson. And would you folks go to the podium, and we'll need either your address or your ward number. And remember, it's 8. Good evening.
We are from Ward 8.
And I want to get your names, if we could.
Okay. Hello, I'm Anna Emerson. And I'm Jillian Taylor. We are here to discuss the Walker Pool. Walker Middle School has always been a place for students to go to on weekdays and weekends, thanks to the Dream Center. But in 2012, many programs at Walker closed due to budget cuts, including the pool, which we want to reopen by this summer. I know one of the mayor's priorities is to support strong neighborhoods, and since the Walker Pool is located in the middle of a neighborhood, reopening it could make the neighborhood come closer together. The Salem-Keizer School District has been maintaining the pool, and all that needs to be done is cleaned around the edges and hire staff. We have a GoFundMe set up for fundraising for the pool. We also would like to get sponsors locally to have enough money to keep the pool running. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for speakers? Member Bailey.
Hi, who owns the pool?
I'm pretty sure the city of Salem right now owns the pool. Our principal told us that in 2011, the Salem-Keizer School District, they couldn't afford it anymore, and now it's the city of Salem's. They sold it to the city of Salem, who closed it because they couldn't afford it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, young ladies, for coming down this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the only other person signed up for public testimony is Carol Snyder. Carol Heyer, okay.
I'm Carol Snyder, Secretary of Salem Parks Foundation, and also a member of the city's Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and I live in Ward 7. I did testify before, but someone told me that I should come tonight and do a little update, so I don't know. It's brief. I was here on April 12th regarding McKay School Park Playground, and at that time I reported that Salem Parks Foundation was willing to raise funds for new playground equipment for McKay Park if the city would commit to preparing the site for the playground. Since then, Salem Parks Foundation has met with the Public Works staff, including engineer Christina Vincent, to discuss the feasibility of the project. And Jennifer Keller, acting Parks Operation Manager, reported to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board last week that the project is on the budget wish list. And we're really happy about that. We're excited that this deteriorating playground in a neighborhood full of families with children may indeed get some improvements, and we're eager to roll up our sleeves and get to work raising the funds. We see it as an ongoing project, but we think it's important that a few pieces of new equipment be installed shortly after the site is prepared. Once the budget is approved, we will be meeting with Parks Operations and with the neighborhood to determine which pieces should be purchased and in what order. We have a long history of working with the city on park projects and can't wait to get started on this one. Meantime, we are researching grants, looking for partners, and planning our campaign. Please continue to include this project in the budget. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Snyder? Member Milton. I got it down, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Quick question. You in the last testimony we had, you just mentioned that you guys are going to start trying to raise money. It seemed that you guys had money for...
We have some money, and we will really start working on a major campaign.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for your testimony this evening. And is there anyone else who wishes to speak during the public comment section of tonight's meeting? Okay, move on the agenda. The next item is the fiscal year 2017-18 wish list, and City Manager Powers is asked to address the committee.
Thank you. Committee members, you have a memo which outlines my recommendations regarding the wish list items. The Budget Committee has identified through that wish list needs that it believes exist in the community. My memo provides a recommendation, and it's guided by the mission that's been adopted by Council, and that is for the city to provide fiscally sustainable and quality services to enrich the lives of present and future residents, the quality of the environment and neighborhoods, and the vitality of our economy. The items on the list for the general fund total almost $4.3 million. If all items were funded, the city's working capital will drop below the council's 15% policy by the end of fiscal year 2018 instead of by the end of fiscal year 2019. Working capital will be completely expended by fiscal year 2020 instead of fiscal year 2022. Ensuring fiscal stability by aligning resources with the cost of services and maintaining a prudent fund balance is an important issue that will need to be addressed through the strategic planning initiative. Staff did review how to fund each wish list item from current resources. The McKay Park and Civic Center restroom products items will be funded from resources within the fiscal year 2017-18 city manager's proposed budget. The comprehensive plan update is a non-recurring expense and is recommended from working capital in the fiscal year 2017-18 budget. For ongoing wish list items to be funded from the proposed budget, significant changes would have to occur. I provided a few examples, and I emphasize examples to show the magnitude of those changes. Because of the service disruption that the scope of change would cause, I am not recommending any wish list items be funded from reducing other expenditures. Several of the wish list items are ready for implementation in fiscal year 2017-18. From the wish list, I would recommend the use of working capital for those items as follows: the homeless rental assistance program, the deferred maintenance financing, and a deputy fire marshal. Each of these items may have alternative funding sources in later years. While worthy of consideration, the remaining wish list items should wait for the completion of other work, most notably the city's strategic plan. The memo outlines the analysis for each item, and myself and staff are prepared to go into whatever detail the Budget Committee would like regarding that analysis. In addition to the Budget Committee's wish list items, staff has heard the feedback and concerns regarding other issues. In response to Judge Aiken's request for security and space improvements, a court security safety committee has been created to guide the risk assessment that will be done of the court. The court will be fully included in the city's space planning work that will gain momentum depending on tomorrow's police facility bond measure. And I would like to join Kelly in thanking the committee members that are leaving, as well as all committee members for your work and input into the city's budget process. Thank you.
Any questions for City Manager Powers? Member Anderson.
It's more a process question. I presume we're going to discuss each one of the wish list items individually as we go through them? Yeah. I presume somebody's going to move, then we'll discuss them.
Correct.
So I don't have any questions. You'll be all happy to know that I don't have any questions at this time.
Any more questions?
Yeah, no, I didn't say that.
You did say at this time. That's the catch. I did have one question. The number 2, the updated comprehensive plan. Could you speak to that? I see that you're recommending that also as a one-time expense.
Yes, from the work that is emerging from the strategic plan, from the situation assessment, a need to update the city's land use comprehensive plan. It has emerged as a need, and that is recommended for funding from our working capital.
All right.
Question?
I think, question? Okay, Member Bailey.
Steve, could you talk a little bit about your, excuse me, recommendation number 10 on the city auditor position, please, to not include that in the budget at this time, but rather to wait for completion of the strategic planning process. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, because the information I've been looking at that's submitted to us about the city auditor position made a lot of sense to me, but I'd be interested in your views on that.
Thank you. I do believe that a city auditor or city performance auditor would have some value to the organization. Salem is the third largest city in Oregon. We're a complex $500 million enterprise. However, I do believe it should be considered within the context of other needs that are going to, I expect, emerge from the strategic planning, and specifically the transition plan that will be prepared by the organization and considered by council to move the organization from where we're at today, taking the goals and the actions that council will be considering this summer and fall, and putting those into a transition plan. And at the completion or at the initiation, I should say, of the transition plan for consideration in the fiscal year 18-19 budget, a performance, an auditor could very well be an enhancement that I would recommend.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I believe Mayor Bennett, Member McCoy.
Well, get this party started. I'm going to move the city manager's recommendations that we fund from the wish list items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
All right, there's I'd like to speak to your motion.
Well, I'd speak to the motion. I'm sitting on the homeless task or work group, so the first item there, and I've been privileged to sort of be involved in that plan as it came about through the year, the Homeless Rental Assistance Program. Last week we talked about the moral responsibilities we have for some programs here. I think this is a moral responsibility for the city to start dealing with a program in a more organized manner, and not the piecemeal manner that the communities dealt with the homeless issue in the past. This is certainly one that, as I've read it and gone through the discussions, makes sense to me. It's logical. It's getting folks in a home first and then getting them into the social services, coordinating how they get into those social services, and making sure we follow up to make sure that they're progressing on their path back to, out of homelessness. So this, to me, is the most important item on the list, and one I fully support. When we go to the others, the comprehensive plan, again, we're talking about our strategic plan. And again, I sit on another one of the growth work group where, after quite a bit of discussion, it became clear that one way to get at that strategic plan and embed it, we're going to have to go back and look at and update the comprehensive plan we have now that was originally drafted in 1978, has sections that still date back to 1978. We've got a lot of pieces we've upgraded in the ongoing on specific issues, but we haven't looked at that plan as a whole. So I think that's, if we're going to be serious about a strategic plan, we need to be serious about dealing with the comprehensive plan at the same time. Deferred maintenance, enough said, it's in the budget. We need it. We need a lot more than that, but that's a start. And the fire marshal position is, again, something that we need if we're going to be able to sort of control our own destiny in terms of what we do in overseeing those responses and making sure the city's meeting the needs as designated by Oregon's fire code. So all four of those, I certainly applaud the city manager. I think, in my mind, he's got the things that we need to work at moving forward. There's other things here that you can see in the plan that will be funded with current funds too, so it's not just those four, but those are the four, I think, for me, that we need to follow through.
All right, Member Hoy and then Member Anderson.
I have a process question, and that's, so we have a couple of different types of items in 1 through 4, and one is already in the manager's budget, so I don't know do we actually need to take action on that individually off of the wish list, since it's included? And I know item number 5 is in that same category, so I'm just not clear how we do that. And the second part of my question is, for those items that aren't in the city manager's budget, will we be coming up with ways to pay for those tonight, or will we, in a separate motion?
I would assume that there's a motion put forward to put something on the wish list into the budget, then it would be natural to address how to pay for that at the same time.
Thank you.
Member Anderson. Well, actually, Officer Jacobs?
Thank you. I just a point of clarification. Items 1 through 4 on the wish list are not in the manager's budget. Item 5 is currently included in the city manager's budget, as is item 6.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Member Anderson.
My question really concerns the update of the comprehensive plan, and my comments do. I'm all in favor of 1, 3, and 4. I have some questions about 2. I'm certainly theoretically in favor of it, and this is probably, I think, for the manager to answer. It looks like you're asking for $400,000, but in the proposal, it sounds like you really don't expect to spend all 400 of that amount this year?
Correct.
So how much do you anticipate spending? Because I look at this and say, okay, if you're going to spend $200,000, and we're already getting close to the limit, maybe we only want to allocate the amount you anticipate spending this year. So, I don't know if you can tell us now how much you think we might be spending of that 400.
The expectation is half.
Okay.
200,000.
Then, go ahead, Mayor.
Bob. Do you,
Yeah.
Bennett.
The only concern, I thought that the reason we had 400,000 was to guarantee we would complete the project and not go through a second budget cycle. What we'd end up with half the funding is half a comprehensive plan update, possibly uncompleted. That's the only.
Yeah, I can understand that, and that makes sense theoretically. I don't know as a practical matter that the same council is going to be here next year, so I think it'll be pretty hard for us not to, if we split it 200 and 200, it'd be pretty hard for us to say, well, we didn't really mean that $200,000.
We'll need it.
Yeah, but I mean, no, it's not need. I said we didn't really mean to go ahead and spend 200,000, and we don't really care about the next 200,000. I think, we're committed to do that no matter what happens. The other question I have is, the 15% figure in terms of what our goal is and what is with accepted, nationwide practices for cities. As the way the budget is recommended with the recommendations that came in, your recommendations that we're looking at here, are we still over that 15% or right at it? Because I see we look like we were pretty close before we started.
The recommended enhancements would drop us below the 15%.
To what?
By the end of fiscal year 2019, it would drop below the 15% to about 13%.
Okay, at the end of fiscal year 2018, it would still be above?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to follow up. You're talking about the entire budget, not just the general fund, but you're talking.
Just the general fund.
Just general fund.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to speak to the motion?
I'll do it just real quickly.
Mayor Bennett.
Yeah, I support the motion. I think because this is the manager's recommendation, he has worked his way through on funding it, and actually several other programs in here through existing revenue and programs. I see some that I care a lot about added to it, really, like McKay School Park, the sobering center, I think we can look to the future for the city auditor, but I feel like those front four, like the president of the council does, that these are just really important programs we need to get underway on. So I'm real supportive of 1 through 4.
Member Bailey.
Just a comment on this. I'm going to support this too, but I want to express my appreciation to the city manager and the financial officer for the response here on all of these items. It's very helpful, and it's the first time I've really been able to, in these processes, have a list here with some thoughtful response for this year as well as looking forward to future years. And this is, to me, personally, this is what the Budget Committee is all about, is to see whether or not there's reasonable responses. We may not agree with everything on here, but I'm not going to substitute my judgment for the city managers in all of these little cases, in each individual case. So I appreciate the overall work on this. It's very helpful for me. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Member Nanke.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm in support of the motion, which over the last maybe 8 years is an anomaly. So, yeah, well, we've tried to add some things in, and I've had to vote no.
Have a piece of cake.
And it's rather interesting because then we had an issue with quorums at council, and I had to actually vote yes because otherwise we would have had no budget. So, the world turns in strange ways sometimes. That's right.
Yeah. All right, any other comments? Member Bassett.
Good, thank you. Just a question from one of the past meetings, the budget officer had mentioned an adjustment in the general fund ending balance went up by some numbers of hundreds of thousands. And I just want to confirm that that is counted into the city manager's numbers when you look at the ending balance.
Ms. Jacobs?
Absolutely every penny.
All right.
And how much was it?
Director Jacobs, another question? There's another question for you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon?
Well, go ahead.
It was over 700,000, but, so this is going to put the lie to what I just said. I can't tell you the exact amount without looking. But it is included in the manager's recommendations.
701,580.
Thank you.
All right.
And just to follow
Member
up,
Cook? Oh, go ahead, follow up.
is it targeted at any of the line items? Did it make the difference in funding or not funding one or another?
It helped. It helped. It's not. None of the recommended items are targeted toward that additional working capital.
Okay, Member Cook?
Thank you. I just had a question about item number 9, the sobering center, and it looks like...
Could we put that off
State of the
until we're
motion?
dealing with the specific
Wonderful.
motion for the first hour, so we'll get to that one. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Member Milton?
Can I just get a repeat of the motion just for clarification?
Sure.
Yeah, I move the city manager's recommendation for the items to be funded off the wish list, which is items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
All right.
I second. Oh,
More Green and then Member
That's right.
Kaiser.
I don't know
Thank you,
where-
Chair. I just want clarification on these 4 items. We've got options for funding and 2 bullet points. The first one is equivalent reduction to other general fund program areas, and the second one is equivalent reduction to unappropriated ending balance working capital. So you have an option, you will exercise an option, is that correct?
Each for this evening, each of the 4 is the funding source for each of the 4 is working capital.
Is working capital?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Member Taser.
Just process clarification for the newbie. We're voting per fund, correct? So this motion is just for the general fund?
Yes.
For wish list items, and then we'll go on for their funds? Thank you.
Okay, anything else? I do want to add, I'm in favor of the motion, especially item number 2, which is the updated comprehensive plan. You know, one of the things that my sense the citizens have spoken loudly and clearly about is our planning process and how we need one. And I believe even though we may not spend the entire amount, to have an amount allocated that will get us that plan, I think is important, and it shows the message to the citizens that we're serious about it. Even though it could be handled in a 2-step process, I think it's better to do it this evening. Member Moore Green.
Thank you. And I have an issue with using working capital, especially when we're looking at things dropping in 2019 to below the recommended percentage amount. Could you give me some confidence, some sort of encouragement as to why I could tell somebody, you know, in my ward, why perhaps I voted to use working capital when we've got other long-term issues such as the PERS in front of us? Could somebody help me with that? Thank you.
Mayor Bennett?
Well, I'll try. You're welcome. Remember, this year, we came in here with a number the first night as to how much working capital we had. We're leaving later with in excess of $700,000 in addition. And I think one of the things to remember is that we're in a growth economy. We're looking at a tremendous amount of construction going on. We're going to have collections that will increase. And I think that as time passes, this is an inexact. These are always inexact estimates, and I think we'll see growing capital. I just think we have to be real cautious about wildly expensive changes in what we're doing or large one-time reductions. But what the manager's recommending, he has comfortably said we can handle this, and that has been, along with his staff, they're the ones who've kept us at the 15% and above. So I have tremendous confidence in his and the staff's ability to work with this number, to look at our projections as time goes by in terms of revenue projections and see how we do actually end up. And then, and this has been our experience over the years, there are savings internally that occur that tend to rebalance that number. I've been on the budget committee for about 15 years or so, maybe a little longer. Same with Nanki. We've watched for years the 5-year cliff. And I think it's a great system. Other agencies in this town don't use that kind of system, and they went over the cliff years ago. We continue to stay steady on that, and I think that the manager's recommendation keeps us in that flow. I'm very confident myself that this is a good budget, and that there probably is other amounts of wiggle room in here. So I really would suggest you can, with great confidence, say we're not headed off the cliff here. We're in good shape.
Member Anderson.
Thank you. I've only been on the Budget Committee 3 times now, but each time I hear this, you know, from my first year, we should be hitting the cliff 2 years from now, and from the mayor's first year, we should be down at the bottom, all rusted out now. You know, and I use the Thelma and Louise analogy. We are not Thelma and Louise driving off the cliff. We are Thelma and Louise driving parallel to the cliff. And unless there is some really weird change of course as we're going parallel to the cliff, we're going to stay parallel to the cliff all the way. And I don't think this is a big course. Just in case you want to give them a little more colorful thing than we trust the city manager, which we do trust, but we're driving parallel to the cliff, not headed off the cliff.
Member Nanki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in a similar vein, we see the cliff that Thelma and Louise could drive over and purposely make modifications to our driving to not go over that edge. So sometimes that means we have to cut staff, rearrange how we're configured inside as well. Sometimes we get unexpected revenue as well, which is always kind of that as far as when you're actually going the ongoing expenses as well, which I've always had concerns with. We're not as great a number this year, which is why I'll actually support it as well. There's some programs that need to happen, and I'm willing to help figure out how to either cut or modify or raise to get some of those people off the street as well, and that's the biggest dollar item that's in there.
Anything else? Okay, there's a motion on the floor that has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. And unless there's any other suggestions as far as coupling items, we will go through the rest one by one. The McKay School Park improvements of $170,000, I move that we take off the wish list because it appears that that equal amount of money is in the budget and is now specified for that purpose.
I would second.
Don't have to?
Just leave it alone.
Okay. All right, I won't touch it.
Making me nervous.
Okay.
That's McKay, right?
Any questions or comments on number 5?
I'm really impressed at how effective Member Hoy, Councilor Hoy is. He's been on here a month and he already got the thing funded. You're good.
Confirm with Budget Officer Jacobs that process-wise, this is proceeding how it should?
I think it's just fine, yes.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or anything, we'll move on to number 6, and that is the free hygiene products in Civic Center restrooms for $5,000, one-time pilot project.
It's also within the
It's already funded.
And that's also within the budget.
So we just leave it alone?
Questions, comments? Moving on, halfway done. Number 11 is the reopening of fire station number 11 and $1.2 million. Mayor Bennett.
I'm going to move, we accept item number 7.
Second. I'm sorry.
Well, accept means
the
do not
recommendation,
approve.
or-
Accept the recommendation?
No, to
Okay.
move it. I'm sorry if that
Okay.
wasn't clear.
So you're not moving the staff recommendation? you're
No, I'm moving $1.2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, do we have a second?
Yeah.
Member Hoy, okay, thank you.
I'll just, I'll be very brief. I think when you look at the map of service delivery in the city, we're watching a serious deterioration occurring in the northwest quadrant, where Station 11 was closed several years ago during the recession. We're out of the recession. It's time to start reversing these service decisions. I think we heard in discussion with the fire chief, the impact this has on training opportunities, on their service delivery broadly in the city. I know we don't like to talk about a third bridge, but without a third bridge, the ability of Station 5 to service that northwest quadrant is impossible. We really only have backup really seriously out of Station 1. If Station 5 has been called out somewhere else, I mean, you have to think about how these engine companies are moving around the city. And really, I think more than just saying reopen Station 11, what I'm talking about is another engine company. We badly need another engine company. Our response times are deteriorating and will continue to deteriorate. The closer I get to serious old age, the more concerned I get. The closer any of you get to a car wreck, a house fire, one of those unexpected young people heart attacks, you're going to want those people there in matters of minutes if you're going to survive. And right now, there are parts of this city, not where I live. I live in a really great part of the city. I live in central Salem, where we have lots of calls and quick response times. You get out on the peripheral part of Salem, particularly I'm looking at the northwest quadrant, you don't have that kind of service. And I think it's important, if we don't do it this year, we need to continue to look at this every year. And I can just tell you, every year you're going to watch those response times deteriorate. And I think we need to be prepared at some point to come to grips with that. I mean, I'd love to do it this year. That may not be possible this year, but we're going to have to come to grips with that. These are lives. This is what we do as a city: water, sewer, public safety, the things we do really well. And right now, public safety needs this kind of support at the fire department. So that's my reason.
Member Hazlitt?
I'd just like to hear from the people that basically said, or who wrote about the fire department and city strategic planning efforts to conclude before we do this. What were you actually looking at on that? And how long do we wait for that?
I can start the answer, then Fire Chief Niblock can provide additional details. Currently, the department is undergoing a review and update to its deployment and standards of cover, which will then be data that will be used for a department strategic plan that will look at the environment, the response times, how the city, how the organization can meet those response times. So Chief Niblock can provide the timelines and additional detail.
So we're currently in the process right now. We've done our pre-analysis work to look at some of the implications, and we hope to have the revised standards of cover document completed by the 1st of July, this next July. And the strategic planning will be about the same time frame, maybe a few weeks later than that. We want to have the standards of cover, the policy document complete before we really dive down into the strategic planning sections of it.
Member Hoy.
So as the person who put this on the wish list, I just feel the need to speak to it. I feel like we're either going to pay now or we're going to pay bigger later, because this is a problem. If you've looked at the response times, if you've looked at the maps, this is a major concern. And this is a life safety concern, and we can either put a down payment now, or we can make a huge payment next year. And I think incremental growth is much more appropriate than trying to do it all at one time. And we need this station now. We needed it last year, but we really need it now. Next year it's going to be, I think, even more critical. But I really support doing this year. I think it's time. I don't think we can afford to wait.
Member McCoy, and then Member Anderson.
A couple things. First, Mr. City Manager, I guess this question would be to you. You indicate in here that once the fire department's standards of cover and strategic manner are done, and you sort of have you got the plan in place for how you're going to deal with this moving forward, then that the City Council can then consider fire department resources early in the next fiscal year upon completion of that planning and analysis. So in your mind, it sounds to me like you are not adverse to funding it, but you'd like to see where that money is going, not just opening another fire station, not putting words in your mouth, but that's how I interpret that.
That's correct. That's a correct interpretation.
Okay. I was very vocal last year in getting the first fire station open, or the fire station open from last year. I am also been vocal that we can't keep building fire stations to deal with what has basically become a very increasing demand for medical services, where there's 24,000 calls and 500 or 600 are fires, and the rest are some kind of a medical emergency. Furthermore, I remember the chief in the budget discussion saying it's gone up 7 or 8% last year, which is 2,200 calls, which is another fire station. Well, it's going up 8% this year on a higher number, so it's going to be 2,400 or 2,500 calls by this time next year, which is another fire station. We can't keep building fire stations at $1 million $1.7 or $1.5 million or whatever it costs, that's not going to solve this problem, because with the, as you call it, the silver tsunami, Councilor Cook, of which I'm probably a leading member, we're getting older, and this is just going to continue to move as the second biggest generation now in the history of the United States, ages and moves into their 70s. This isn't going away. It's going to get bigger and bigger, and I suspect that 2,000 is going to be 3,000 or 3,500, and we're either going to have 25 fire stations in the city, or we're going to figure out another way to do this. Because of that, I would support the city manager's recommendation. I'm not adverse to funding it. I just think we need to look at another way to fund that and deal with the problem that's not going away.
Member Anderson, and then Member Bassett.
Thank you. I attended a session today with Chief Niblock where I got a little preview of the strategic planning, and they're really diving down, and so I certainly expect that when things are done this early in the summer or midsummer, we're going to see something that will be well thought out and will be starting to address the needs that have been addressed here. I also note that it's only 2% of the calls are actual fires, and so Councilor McCoy is right. I mean, that's where it's coming from, and I also will tell you that I know the chief and the planners are working on a way not to address those calls without, in the most efficient, effective way, without the use of big resources. So, Chief, I have a question, because last year, and maybe even the year before, we went around this quite some different ways, and I'm frankly not exactly remembering. I know we gave money to the fires and fire department, and we opened up, I think we opened up a station, but didn't we leave it to your discretion, saying we will give you X number of dollars and you can figure out how best to use it, as opposed to not telling you have to open up a station?
That's correct. The last year was $1.7 million. The bulk of that money was to open Fire Station 8. The balance of that money, about $340,000, was to cover overtime, because that was the council's desire to staff it right away July 1st. So we staffed it with overtime dollars, and then we recruited and hired, and now it's staffed with regular staffing 24 hours a day. And that station had the largest impact in the community. And that was where the need was in the community to open that station. And what I would say to Councilor McCoy's point is, you're correct. We're not ever going to have 25 fire station locations here in Salem, but we need to have the available resources to be able to handle those calls. And so we have a concentration issue and a cover the dirt issue. So those are two separate things. But we may need to add resources to deal with the number of calls that we're having.
A follow-up question, if I may. We also got into something, you mentioned it, by the overtime issue, because it takes time to staff up. If this $1.2 million were allocated starting July 1, would we have the same sort of situation that it really wouldn't be till sometime down the line that you would actually have the station open and the personnel there to man it?
That's correct. I believe the motion was to add $1.2 million for us to have the station operational by January 1st of 2018.
So if we wanted to have it operational July 1st, it would be
another $750,000 for overtime. That's correct.
Okay, and overtime. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure it would do good, but could you tell us what would happen if, say, we were to give $800,000 or $600,000? I mean, would you be able to open the station, or would you use it some other way? Or would you open the station half-time, or how would you allocate that if you got less than 1.2?
We'd have to do the analysis to look at that, but there may be some options where we could do a peak type of deployment. We've had a 40-hour engine at Station 11. When it first opened, it was a 40-hour resource. So that would be an option for less dollars than 1.2. And remember, 1.2 is 9 months of operation, so the following year would be 1.4 for a full year of operation for a 24/7 engine.
So a possibility would be to open reopen the fire station during 40 hours where your statistics show that is the peak time when you have the kind of calls we're talking about.
That's always an option, and I'm not going to stand here and say if there's resources that are given to us, we'll take whatever we can get.
Sure. Thanks.
Member Bassett.
Yeah, just two brief comments that I'm encouraged that the call volume, even though it's up, that 74% of it are medical, and that the fire department is looking at alternative response units and sending just the ambulance out to more of the calls. The other comment that I have is that I wanted to ask about the ending fund balance target of 15%, and ask during the last 10 or 15 years, have there been other targets for the ending balance of closer to 10%?
Talking about the working capital?
Yeah.
So I believe prior to, Casey Duncan, Deputy City Manager, prior to about 2007, the council did not have an ending fund balance policy. And in 2007 and 8, when the Finance Committee was first formulated, that was one of their charges to create policies for the city. At that time, a reserve balance of 15% was established, and it has not changed since then.
Member Hoy.
Just to go back to the fire station discussion, so this is, to me, this is a citywide issue, even though it's located over in a specific geographic area. There's a system impact that draws from all areas of the city when we don't have a sufficient number of our stations open. And we're not talking about building a new station here. We already have it, and this is just fully staffing the system that we have. And then the chief has committed to looking at other ways to make it more efficient, to do other types of responses. I just think that it makes sense to get our system fully staffed again, fully open, because this is a citywide impact with the station being closed.
Member Bailey.
So we already have a station in place, correct?
Yep. Yes.
That's a good thing. And Mayor Bennett, your argument is that there's not only the need is there, but there is sufficient growth in the community and in potential revenues coming to the city that you're willing to add this into the budget, and the ongoing costs in future years of $1,400 or so, that the budget will be able to absorb it with what you foresee in the economic projections for the city. Is that correct?
The question is to who?
It's to Mayor Bennett.
Yeah, my motion is to reopen Fire Station 11 for $1.2 million.
Well, I know, but
and it's a moment of great faith. Yeah.
A moment of great pain?
Faith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is for the Budget Committee to consider, but I think it has to be on the table every time we meet. I've wanted it on the table every time we've met since we closed it. We got done with the recession. I'm ready to keep moving forward, but those are the issues that the Budget Committee faces. I'm ready to vote for it.
Member Milton, and then Member McCoy.
When the chief is speaking to the station or to the dollars, he keeps mentioning he's analyzing and still kind of putting stuff together. I'm not for or nor against. However, it's hard to make a decision on something when things are still being analyzed, if that makes sense. I mean, it's what are we putting a dollar to if there's still changes that could be made? There could be some differences in figures overall. So I just, when I hear that, unless it's matter of fact, it makes it very hard to sit here and go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I think we still need to keep, if we're going to be still at the drawing board, we need to complete what we're drawing before we really hit up on some of these higher dollar figures.
Member McCoy?
I went along last year, and I agree with the mayor to some degree that just the way the system's set up, whether it's staff vacancies or people are leaving that were budgeted and don't fill the job soon enough and all those, that it builds sort of an ongoing natural pad that cushions that ending balance. But I think we took care of that with the $2 million we just passed on my original motion for the city manager's recommendation. Now we're going to add basically an ongoing expense of 1.6 plus inflation, and we're headed for $4 million. And I'm not so sure there's that much give and take on an ongoing basis in that budget to do that. So I'm not going to support this, though I'd like to. I just don't think when you look at PERS and everything else that's going on, that this is a wise decision moving forward.
Member Anderson.
I move to amend the motion to allocate $800,000 at the chief's discretion to fund additional monies for the fire department to provide coverage.
Would that be ongoing?
Yes, that's ongoing. And it'll come back next year, and I would presume that next year it's going to be the whole enchilada.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Second by Member Osick. Anything else?
No, I don't have much to add. I think I have great confidence in the chief that he can find effective ways to use this. I understand Member McCoy's concerns, just like I understand the mayor's too, so I'm trying to find someplace in the middle here. Actually, it's not in the middle, it's toward the higher end.
Is this again coming from the working capital? And if so, where does that put us in terms of our 15% policy?
Yes, and Budget Officer Jacobs, are you keeping a running tally?
Well, I can say that it will put us lower sooner. The manager already indicated with his recommendations that we would be hitting that point in, I think, fiscal year 2018-19 or 2019-20. So when we add $1 million, it's going to put us to that point sooner. We can run. I'll run a quick tab for you, and we'll get you an answer. We actually have a tool that we can do that and get you a pretty accurate answer.
Okay.
As we're talking about this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Cook.
So just a point of clarification. If I'm understanding this correctly, the $1.2 million is to reopen the fire station in the west, which Councilor Hoy was saying won't just affect West Salem because it's a drain on all of the stations when we're not adequately serviced. It'll help bolster service in all areas, which does match what Chief Niblock talked about when we were meeting. To Councilor Anderson's amendment, I do have a concern, although I'm sure extra money is always appreciated, about just throwing an arbitrary amount out there. As Councilor Nanke had talked about, opening a station and then closing it, throwing extra funds out and not. I appreciate the spirit, but I would want to see what we're actually going to be able to show for that, because if it is a coverage issue, more people hired in the same spaces may not have an effect. So especially as a recurring cost, I would want further clarification on that.
Member Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question regarding process last year. I believe that the budget was passed without us reopening the fire station, and then it was reopened when council met subsequently. That is the process that I'd be comfortable with this particular proposal, because I just don't have the specific scenarios or the detail. If the city could do some research and give us some assurance that, yes, we could use this money and here's how we would use it for the 800, I'd feel a lot more comfortable, but I'm just kind of uncomfortable given the manager's recommendation. And I think the council would always have the opportunity to go ahead and open it once they got more information. So just my 2 cents.
Okay. I'll give my comments. I'm going to oppose the amended motion because I believe the appropriate thing to do is to once and for all have all of the fire stations that have been built in Salem operating. The final thing for me was the meeting that I attended with Chief Niblock this evening, and learned that we now send an ambulance and 2 engines to cardiac arrest episode, because it's been found, and we proved it here locally in just a short amount of time, it saves lives. It saves lives. But it takes more effort, more equipment, more manpower. But it saves lives. And the fire station 11, I think, is the one way that we can cut into that even more. And if it's not now, should it have been last year? And I'm at the point now where waiting until next year is taking too much of a risk. Even though the fire chief is doing the best they can to come up with ways to be more efficient, I don't think they're ever going to be so efficient that that fire station's not going to be needed. So I would vote no on the amended motion, but I would vote yes on the original motion. All right, anything else? Member Nanki, sorry I didn't call you before.
Thank you. That's okay, because Member Bergman pretty much took the context of what I was going to say. Council can approve this. We're talking 6 weeks. Or just a little more. Before we have that, we could still open whatever if we needed to by January 1st. I'd just like to see the results. So, not that I'm opposed or in favor, because I don't know what our best strategy is, and that's what they're doing, and it's really close. So unless the budget committee members have this burning desire, pun intended. Sorry. Thank you.
I, for one city council member, would really value the opinion and choice of the budget committee. The city council will always have an option to mess what's sent to it. But I believe that's the purpose of this 18-member committee, is to make solid budget recommendations for the city. And so I would, even though the council can change things down the road, I'd like to see this issue dealt with here. Member Kaiser.
Thank you, guys. I would just like to echo, I guess, a couple of the comments made already about, I too would be interested in seeing what the fire department and Chief Niblock comes up with in terms of their standards of cover, and whether or not they align with reopening a fire station. I wish it would have happened sooner to get those before the budget committee, kind of with the whole strategic planning process, because it's not just this item that the city manager is recommending we hold off on. It's multiple items that are kind of hinged on this strategic planning effort. And it's difficult because our current structure and the way we are, I definitely see the need for it, but moving forward and the possibility of change over the next year tied to that makes this decision more difficult for me to make, because things could be changing. There could be a different response model going forward, and to dedicate funding right now in some ways could seem a little premature. So I'd like to see fire station open, but at the same time, if we're studying it and analyzing it, I'd really like to see what those results are.
So just to clarify, the way I understood what the chief has told us is that they are studying the process, studying ways to be more efficient. But even if we open this fire station, we're still behind. This is only going to catch us up a little bit. This is not going to bring us to where we really need to be. So I think efficiencies might just make us, take us to maybe the industry standard. We need to open the station regardless of those efficiencies. This is, to me, this is something we have to do regardless of all of the other practices that they're looking at.
All right, I think it's time to vote on the amended motion. And Member Anderson, could you repeat your motion?
I amend the mayor's motion to allocate $800,000 to the fire department at Chief Niblock's discretion to use as he feels appropriate to address the deficiencies in response time.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No? All right.
Have to raise their hands.
Only if we're close? Abstain, okay. All right, we go back to the main motion. And if we're ready to vote, that was to put into the budget $1.2 million for opening Fire Station 11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And could I see hands of the ayes? Okay, 6, and it takes 10 to pass a motion on the Budget Committee, so motion fails. Okay. Next on the agenda is the feasibility study for library services, $200,000. Do I have a motion? Member Cook?
I would like to move staff recommendation. This is a difficult vote for me because I do love our library, but I agree with City Manager Powers that while we don't have a new city librarian, this wouldn't be the best time to undertake the feasibility study. We should wait until that position is filled.
Second.
All right. There's a motion by Member Cook, seconded by Member McCoy. Any other comments? Member Bailey.
As the maker of the original motion to put this on the wish list, I concur with that. I think it's, I wanted to raise the issue. It's been raised. I think it'll be on somebody's radar screen, and I think it is premature. So I'm going to support the motion.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is the Sobering Center for $200,000. And I would entertain a motion. Member McCoy.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay.
This sort of goes along with what the discussion we just had with the fire station in terms, is it needed? Yeah, it's needed. Would it help the community and certainly the police department if we had a sobering center? Yeah, but we don't have the specificity. Should have used an easier word there. As the city manager says, at some time, likely this summer, once we have more specifics, the council can consider funding this moving forward. And I think, so I think this is an appropriate suggestion. I support it.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Number 10, the city auditor position.
There's the motion right there.
Member Bergman.
Oh, thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve this wish list item and to include it in the next fiscal year's budget.
Second.
Second by who? Okay, thank you. You want to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. So I would like to encourage everyone here who hasn't read the written testimony to please look at items F, I, J, and M. There is a tremendous amount of information on those attachments. Primarily, I'd really like to direct your attention toward Sharon Blasey's testimony, which highlights that an auditor's presence will actually strengthen strategic planning by highlighting weak points. So I understand the city manager's rationale for how, strategic planning might be, maybe now's not the right time. But I think that it could help strengthen that. But beyond strategic planning, an auditor's role also looks at compliance, it looks at efficiency of operations, it looks at a whole bunch of different things that really make this an economically wise decision. Not only does it increase transparency, but if you look at the Government Accountability Office at the federal level, for every dollar that gets invested into an audit function, there's $112 return on that investment. Even if we have a fraction of that at the city level, it makes sense. This proposal has attracted national attention. We've got the City of Honolulu's auditor, the City of Seattle's auditor, the City of Denver's auditor, the Secretary of State supporting, or I'm sorry, the Secretary of State's Audit Division Director supporting this motion. I think it makes absolute sense, and I think it sends the right message to the stakeholders, the people who voted us in office, because it adds that additional level of transparency. I think it's wise to rely on management instruction, but when we're handling such important decisions as millions of taxpayer dollars, I think it makes sense to get that additional level of assurance, because financial statement accuracy is important enough to get an annual required financial audit. I think there's other things that are just as important as financial statement accuracy. So with that, I hope that you'll consider approving this motion.
Member Anderson.
This is actually one that I'm still in a quandary about. I can appreciate what the city manager says, but I also appreciated that all the auditors who wrote in thought it was a great idea. I guess my question is, there was one comment I think that Ms. Blasi made, Sharon made it, which was that there's a difference, and Member Bergman made the same thing. There's a difference between hiring an outside firm to come in and make sure your books balance, which is kind of what we do right now. We have to do that, and then having an independent auditor. I'd like someone to speak to that, and then on the other side of that balance, and I just recall some issues involved with this in Portland, where I think the auditor is elected, and there's been some contention between the auditor and the city staff, which may or may not be a good thing, but if this is an auditor who was a member of the city staff and not independent, I can see some issues there in terms of your auditing
your friend.
Yeah, your employer. So I'd like if Steve, if you or Kelly could kind of speak to both of those issues. Yeah, Steve Powers or Steve Bergman? Yeah.
Okay. Either way is fine with me. Okay, I could speak to the internal audit arrangement versus the auditor arrangement. So the key here is independence of the audit function. We don't want any management interference that would affect the credibility of an auditor. And so if you look at the traditional internal audit arrangement, an internal auditor's annual plan gets approved by the city council or an audit committee, which is an extension of the city council, but an internal auditor reports administratively to the city manager or the deputy city manager. And so that by design preserves the auditor's independence. Or you could go the elected route, or you could go with another route, but as long as we maintain that independence, that's the key. Hopefully that touches on what you're talking about. Okay.
And to answer the first part of your question, yes, this would be distinct and separate from the current financial audit, which can include some compliance, but certainly is an audit of our financial policies and practices and resources rather than performance.
Member Bailey.
Yeah, I was really, I've been around public spending long enough to know that these kind of independent audits are a good idea. They just are. And I was really persuaded by a lot of the written testimony that was submitted. And I think for the dollar amount that we're talking about here, in fact, I'm surprised it's only $125K, that there's a hell of a value here for the city. That's not a lot of expenditure, and I agree here that the return on that could be significant. Plus, it just, in this day and age, provides that transparency and accountability that is not always possible in a growing organization like this. This is not a little business operation we've got going here. This is the third largest city in Oregon, and I think maybe it's time for Salem to step up and do it. Second?
Yeah.
Did you say second?
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. But I think it's time.
Member Nanke, I missed you, sorry. And then
Thank you.
Mayor Bennett.
And I'm very intrigued by the item. I'd like to see more data and more history on benefits that jurisdictions have seen, and actually have some case study information brought forward as well. That being said, I'd prefer to see that before we spend the money, and that, I mean, it's part of our goals or strategic plan as well, or counselor motion possibly to say, hey, can we have a staff report on benefits of an independent auditor?
Mayor Bennett.
One of the, I'm familiar with the audit function at the state level and how effective it is. I mean, that kind of program audit is really useful. It's really helpful. It also keeps everybody kind of, the thing that makes it so effective, though, I think here, I don't know about Portland has different politics, the way its politics work. It's probably not the best model, but I wonder if we should look at a charter amendment that creates this kind of independent auditor, or at least outline some protective shell for them in looking down the road, not at this management, but looking down the road in 20 years when they're looking at this auditor, and it's kind of like, what's this guy do? Who's he think he is? And they're, you know what I mean? I'm a little concerned about just funding the auditor position without kind of like Nanki, understanding what it's going to do, but I'm also really concerned about this independence. They've got protection over at the Secretary of State's office from the general, through the Secretary of State, from the sort of executive, but that would not exist here the same way, I don't think, and not that it would be a problem with this management team, but it could be over time. I just would like to think more about it in that way. I like the idea. I think the idea is a great idea. I think it will return. The return on investment here is very large, I think, when you get really looking at it.
Member Bassett and then Member Milton.
Yeah, I've had a chance to work around performance or internal auditors and inside the Department of Transportation. And what's reassuring to me is that the agenda for the internal auditors is set by the policymakers. They actually say, yeah, you can look in this area, you can't look at that area. So they actually have to have it approved ahead of time what topics they look at. So if the city council wanted to have more systematic thinking in the fire, which is probably already has enough systematic thinking about response times and that, but if the city council wanted to have this resource, then they can help the city manager with that. Specifically on deferred maintenance, you know, when the city is not spending $9 million a year in order to take care of our roads, and then it costs you 10 times as much to repair it later on, that's the sort of thing that a performance auditor can look at and help the city manager to be more systematic, look across all the capital assets if the city council decides it. So the mandate to the internal auditor, the city audit position, is only what is authorized by the city council. And so since I've seen that in operation, I'm reassured that it would not be in conflict.
Member Milton and then Member McCoy.
Well, first and foremost, I already put in an email, which isn't part of our documents here, but I could not be more supportive of this. I mean, this is something, just the perception to the public, I think it speaks for itself. You know, for what I do for a living, you know, with a $2 trillion company, trust me, I understand audits, and it has a huge perception. And you know, Mayor Bennett, your own words said it. The return of investment, I don't think it's something that we need to dig our heels on, or more better said, analyze to see what the efficiencies of what this auditor can do. I strongly support it. I strongly hope that all the members here would support it, because I agree exactly with what Mayor Bennett said, was the return of investment and the perception to our public and our taxpayers. I think it gives a whole new view on things.
Member McCoy and then Member Kaiser.
Following along with what the mayor was suggesting or asking. It seems to me, before we do this, we need something in a legal form outlining what this job is, what the requirements are, and what the staffing requirements are, rather than just saying, okay, let's hire somebody, city manager or the city attorney, at least an ordinance saying, here, creating this job and what he does and who he reports to, rather than just putting the money out there and we don't really have a mechanism or a plan for exactly how to proceed forward right now.
Member Kaiser.
No one else.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I really wish the strategic planning process had finished up about 4 months ago. There's a reason why the city's doing strategic planning, and that's to figure out what we need to do. So I totally appreciate all the stuff you said, Steve, and all of the testimony. I just think it's a little too early to do this, and I really think we need to wait that extra 4 months to really get that plan down and to work towards that. And when we come back to this in, March of next year, we will have a much clearer understanding of the kind of positions we need to have, the functions they're going to do, and how to move forward.
Mayor Bennett.
I understand what you're saying about the strategic planning and the timing and being able to use this. I think that's a really good point. The thing, though, with the Budget Committee is it is ultimately advisory to the council, and I think what a vote by the Budget Committee in favor of this would do is to inform the council. The Budget Committee took a look at this, agree it is a good expenditure of funds. When it comes to the council alone as a final item, we'll have had a chance to talk about and to work with the manager on do we have the right structure for it? Do we have a plan for how to use it? Do we have, and we could take it out if we don't think it's ready. It's 3 months, well, not quite 3 months away. We'd have that much more time to look at the strategic plan, which doesn't, at this point, I don't recall an auditor being in there. And it'd be too bad to miss this opportunity to sort of move it forward. But if it ends up that it isn't right by the end of June, we can always pull back on it. I just think I think having a strong statement, though, from the Budget Committee that they like this or don't, whichever way, would be really helpful to the council.
Member Nordyke.
Thank you. I'll vote in support of it when we come to that, and here's why. One of the main reasons I decided to apply for the Budget Committee is to ensure oversight and transparency, and this is consistent with that goal 100%. Secondly, this motion merely paints in broad strokes what we would want this position to be. It's merely a way of signaling we would like to dedicate resources for this. It doesn't lay out the job description, and it's not supposed to. That's what legal counsel is for. And thirdly, by the time this jumps through all of the bureaucratic hoops, it may be time for someone to come on board anyway, consistent with the strategic plan, consistent with legal counsel, and consistent with the lengthy recruitment cycle, which, of course, entails creating the position, posting the position, interviewing, conducting background checks, etc. Hiring a new position and creating a new position altogether will take a considerable amount of time. And so I feel that, as Mayor Bennett and as my colleague here has indicated, this is about going and starting on the correct path. It can always be tweaked and edited as appropriate later on, but it has my full support.
All right, anything else? Member Hoy.
So, Mike, I don't have a concern about this position per se, but I have more of a concern about the process, and it feels like the Budget Committee is driving policy, and it should be the other way around, where the manager drives the policy or the council drives the policy, and then we come and ask for the money to support the policy. So it just seems like it's a little bit backwards. And I'm not saying that having an auditor is not a good idea. I know that I work with an internal auditor, and it's a positive experience. But I just get a little bit concerned about that process, and we've deferred to the city manager's judgment on a lot of other things tonight, but this wasn't his recommendation, so I just get confused by or concerned with that process.
Member Milton.
Well, after hearing that, I sort of disagree, and I want to just make that clear. In my viewpoint, a budget committee is to support future thinking, and in this case, we are also the ones trying to help control budget and make recommendations. A auditor in this case that can have efficiency support, which at the bottom line helps support maybe raising capital or finding areas of improvement that can save funds. I think that's exactly what a budget committee is for, is to help find ways to fund other programs and maybe in some case maybe able to hit a couple more of these line items that are on the city manager's report here. So I don't know if I agree with exactly that statement. However, we're not here to try and make policy, but to trying to be a little bit more efficient.
All right, any other questions, comments? The motion on the floor is to establish a city auditor position, $125,100 per year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Could I have the ayes raise their hand? We count again. Those ayes, please keep your hands up. Okay, it's 9, and unfortunately it takes 10 to pass a motion on the budget committee, so the motion fails. Okay. The next item to consider is a code compliance position. The price tag is $79,230 per year, and entertain a motion.
I'll move the city manager's recommendation.
Second.
Do you want to comment?
I'm not sure we even need to do that. He's saying, wait, yeah, it probably is out of order. We'll probably just let this go by if we want to.
Well,
his recommendation is not to fund it.
so we can discuss since it's been seconded?
Not funding it? It's a good chance to now.
I wanted to ask a question about this, if that's all right. Okay, so I would ask that we discuss funding this position, and one of the reasons is the statement, one officer focuses on licensing and inspections of multifamily housing. If I could ask Brady how many units that is for the city, and with the current changes that we've reflected in code, how that would be reflected in staff work.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, committee members. My name is Brady Rogers. I'm your Neighborhood Enhancement Division Administrator. At present, I believe the best estimate we have is 19,500 dwelling units in the program.
So 19,000 units with one officer to inspect them. And I know in Councilor McCoy's ward, I've taken a call from a mom whose son lives in his ward. People call to complain about the condition of where they're living. Things may not be up to code. They're supposed to be on a regular cycle for inspection. At one point, your staffing was larger than before. The mayor talked about the recession and how positions were cut. Things were very lean in the city. How many code compliance officers did you have before? What was the peak level?
The peak level at one time, there were 11 code compliance officers. At this moment in time, I put 8 into the field each day.
Okay, and that's 7 for junk, weed abatement, property structures, 7 for everything else but the housing.
Yes, that's correct.
1 person for housing, and they're going to also be responsible for the short-term rental, transient housing, ADUs, granny flats, all of those code changes coming through in neighborhoods. 1 person, not available on the weekends. First line of defense for my neighborhood. Yeah.
Sounds like a tough job.
It does. And I would argue in the same way that Councillor Hoy had suggested, by not funding this, we're already behind. And I know that we are doing the strategic planning process right now with respect, a great deal of respect for the city manager, because I know he does an excellent job. Because I feel that this department is understaffed and so critical for neighborhood services issues, I really would compel us to fund this additional code compliance position. I know one of the responses the city manager put in is the $25,400 towards the comprehensive study.
Yes, there is money for a study on this program.
But you already know that you're understaffed. 19,000 to 1 is I'm not sure about the odds of getting struck by lightning, but they might be up around there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Under the current configuration of the program, I am understaffed. I cannot predict what the results of the study might be. There might be a different way to go about it as well. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Cook, do you wish to make a substitute motion?
I would substitute that we fund this position.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the substitute motion?
Just one question. Is this a dedicated position then, Brady, I don't know if this is dedicated or what this job is?
Yes, this position, if it were to come about, we would dedicate exclusively to the multi-unit program. We would
The
probably
19,000 to 1 program. It would be 19,000 to 2?
Yes, that's a lot better. We would probably expand the
Sounds uphill.
sideboards. Pardon me?
Kind of sounds uphill, 19,000 to 2. What do you need to get this program under control?
Under the current configuration of the program, a single officer would do it.
Okay.
There would be enough time where we could expand the sideboards of the program, where maybe those folks would take care of the ordinary code violations at these places, the overflowing garbage cans, the this, the that, and create more opportunities for the others in the other neighborhoods doing what they do.
Any other member?
Thank you. And what I'm saying, though, am I correct that the study is already in the budget either way? Because I noticed Brady keeps mentioning the current configuration. The study that may be happening this year may recommend a different configuration.
Correct.
So kind of the way we were going through with everything else, with wait till the planning is done until you make a decision, it would be kind of a similar thing here where you've authorized the study to figure out how to do this program, and yet you're going to start off by questions.
All right, any other questions, comment on the substitute motion? All right, there's substitute motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And can I see the hands of the ayes?
Not the whites of our eyes.
I count 6, and again, it takes 10 to pass. So we go back to the original motion, which was the staff recommendation to hold off on this position until after more research. Mayor Bennett.
I'm just going to make just a comment on this. I prefer that we would add this code compliance, particularly with Brady's assurance it would improve his program. But you know what concerns me is Councilor Ossick's question, and the answer, if I understood it, is I'm beginning to understand the strategy to stop budget decisions, start studies. And if you can get a study going before we go into a budget process on something you don't like, apparently you can stop it, and that makes me uncomfortable. There have been too many of those tonight of, well, it's being studied. Well, most of us know kind of generally where the studies are headed anyway, but when we're doing a citywide strategic planning process and it somehow frustrates our ability to step up on whether if you think it's a needed budget decision, I find that troubling. So I'll just share that with you. That's all. But you ought to vote for my motion. Go ahead. Member Cook.
I agree, Mr. Mayor, and especially on frontline neighborhood issues, code compliance has the ability to diffuse conflict, to strengthen neighborhoods. It really helps to, you'd mentioned, we save lives, we build roads, we take care of water and sewer. Neighborhood services, one of the unsung heroes of that, because, when you have a code issue and it's your neighbor, who are you going to call? You're going to call the one person for 19,000, and that's, yeah.
I might comment only because of my affiliation with them, but in an issue where you have neighbors pitted against neighbors, I call neighbor to neighbor. It's a mediation service that is here in Salem to do exactly that, and they do very well. And I think they're in a better position to do that than city employees. Member Taser.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, it pains me not to fund this position. Like, community development and code compliance, neighborhood enhancement is like very near and dear to my heart. And I would really like to do this. I take a bit of the issue with the mayor's comments about having, we're going to just deny something if there's a study going on. I don't think that's certainly not true in my case. I think that the city has never undergone a strategic planning process before as a whole entity. And I think it's important, and that's why we've spent dozens of hours in meetings and talking about it and doing community outreach. And so I think, we need to take it for what it is, and that's a very serious undertaking. I'm also leaning considerably on the experience and expertise of the city manager, who has looked at this, and I think, I'm going to assume it pains Steve also to not say, yes, we want to add this and we want to reopen that. He has to consider all of the things to present the budget back to us. So I think this year we're in a weird spot. We've got this very ambitious, big project that we're undertaking. And then we've got kind of in the middle of it this budget to deal with. So I do think we need to take our time and be a bit more conservative this year, especially with those things that are a bit more unknown. I do think there are some things that are known that we could move on this year, but I think some of these other issues, and kind of with possible department restructuring and program restructuring, it just might be a little too soon to move on them. So.
Member Nanke, and then Member Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, the city manager was new this time last year and said that it would take through this cycle before we could get our planning in place. So I'm confident we'll get where we're going.
He's not new anymore.
He's not.
Member Cook.
So just to remind everybody, with the code changes that we've had with Uber, with Airbnb, Flip Key, short-term rentals, and with the eclipse coming up, and we know Neighbor to Neighbor is a great nonprofit, but there is a role for city staff in this. We're asking a lot. We're asking a lot of people already in the program based on numbers. And while I appreciate that it may be painful not to vote for this and to have respect to the process, this is a need that affects other systems as well, because there's that ripple effect in a neighborhood. I just wanted to note that.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? And again, this is a motion, staff recommendation to hold off on the code compliance position. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. And could I see hands for ayes? Okay, I think it's 10. Motion passes. Next is the Homeless Initiative Coordinator, $65,000, and Member Anderson.
Thank you. I move staff recommendation.
Second.
I'll be brief. I was the person who brought this up at the last meeting because it was one of the things that was recommended by the manager in the potential add-ons, and because it was one of the items that came out of the Mid-Willamette Valley, help me here, Mayor, the Homeless
Willamette
Task
Valley
Force.
Homeless Initiative.
Yeah, and so I thought we at least needed to take it to the next level, but having had further discussions with staff and also looking at the mayor's initiative of the 1.4 million for Homeless Now, and we are actually already taking some concrete steps, and those steps we are taking are inside our city where we're helping it. So I also note that at least one of the cities in that Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Initiative also did not vote for this, did not vote to allocate any money. So I think we should follow the staff recommendation.
All right, any other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is the increased full-time equivalent for neighborhood association liaison positions. And this would be adding .40 full-time equivalent at $32,000 a year. Member McCoy.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Comments?
I agree with what the city manager says in his recommendation. I have no other things to say.
Any other comments? Well, this may seem odd, but I am going to vote against the motion. Two things from a budget standpoint. One, $32,000, I see a great deal of bang for the buck here. And two, one of the criticisms that at least the city council gets is that we don't do enough for the neighborhood associations. Whenever we need money, we go and rob their services. And I think the folks that work with the neighborhood associations do a great deal of work for little. And I believe that it's time to up that. And this is a minimal amount that could do that. So I will be voting no. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No. And Member Bassett, was that you? Okay. It still passes, though, more than 10. Thank you.
Do you need hands? She needs a count.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, if you could raise your hands. I count 14. All right, that does it for the general fund. The Transportation Service Fund is next, and there is a item, sidewalk repair program, $1 million. And do I hear Member Anderson?
Thank you. This also was my addition to the wish list, and I am going to move that we appropriate $500,000 for the sidewalk repair program.
Second.
I think, if I may speak in favor of it, this is the thing that I know we get in the city all the time. And we get sidewalk issues in the close-in neighborhoods where the issue is my sidewalk is falling apart, my sidewalk is dangerous. We get it in the outlying wards, which are, I don't even have sidewalks. How do we get to schools? How do we get to the bus stations? How do we move around? This, to me, is one of the things, and I know from talking to other counselors, they hear it all the time. And I appreciate the fact that we only have almost $2 million in the unappropriated funds, and $1 million is too much to take out of that, which is why I cut that in half. And I also appreciate the fact that we really need a comprehensive approach, and we need a new streets and bonds, and the next streets and bonds measure, or streets and bridges and sidewalks bond measure will address this. But I think we need something now, again, to show the city, the people of the city, that we've heard their complaints and we're doing something, albeit something of a rather small nature. But we are, with $500,000, we would be increasing the expenditures by 50%. And I know last year we upped it 10% from $900,000 to $1 million, which is about 11% actually. Where's our independent auditor to tell me that? But so this is another thing that we're keeping faith with the people.
Member Cook?
If I can just speak to your motion, Councilor Anderson. So this doesn't mention anything about the prioritization of repairs. And while I do completely appreciate the need for it, and while it seems very reminiscent of the argument I made for code compliance, yes, we do need repairs. I want to make sure that they're done strategically, and I want to make sure that we don't have a situation, as was reported last time by Public Works, that they were having a hard time finding qualified applicants to be able to make the repairs, to be able to do this. We want to make sure that it's a problem that we can adequately fix.
Mayor Bennett, and then Member Anderson.
Thank you. I agree on that, and I would like to see any amount of money go into sidewalks, even if it's only a couple of blocks, which is about what $500,000 will do for us. The only thing I'm concerned about, Councilor, with this motion, we do need a major influx of funds to resolve and to put small bits in suggests we're doing anything. It's politically, I think, I do. I hear what you're saying in terms of responding to the public's, are you hearing us? Yes, we hear you, but I think the bond measure, I think we're talking about in excess of a $10 million project. I mean, this is a major capital investment we've got to make to bring them up to standards, and I'm worried. Reassure me about this worry, okay? That if we put in $500,000 along with our $1 million, people might wonder why their sidewalk isn't getting repaired and become increasingly frustrated by this situation instead of taking the issue out and facing it squarely with them. And because $500,000 is going to do very, very little. $1 million has done very, very little in terms. That $1 million, let's just remember what the cycle looks like. That $1 million represents a 40-year cycle to get the sidewalks in Salem done, as I recall. Mark Bechtel can correct me, but I recall it with $1 million, it'll take 40 years. So we add 500,000, so it'll be 39 and a half. And that's what worries me. You know what I'm saying. We're kind of, I don't want to mislead people that we're really doing anything with 500,000.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah.
If I may, thank you. If the Budget Committee's decision is going to be guided by how an additional $500,000 would be spent, staff believes that it would be spent in arterials. It would be money added to our contracts. It would be money spent on repair of arterial sidewalks along arterial routes.
So,
Member Anderson.
Thanks. I guess that speaks to both of the points raised by Member Cook. Number one, there is going to be some strategic input from the staff, again, in their discretion. And I certainly never expected it would be, let's continue the concentric squares method we have just a little bit farther. I think it would be something that can be at least shown that it's happening outside the central city area. So that's strategic, and I also had understood all along that it would be contracting, not hiring individual employees, which depending on where you fall on private sector versus government work, you could say you get more bang for your bucks from contracting, and this thing, maybe you don't. I think we know where I fall on this, but that argument could be made. And finally, to Mayor Bennett's frustration argument, I think I appreciate that as well. And yes, and to some sense, this is, you know, a political sort of thing to say we are trying to do something, but I think the level of frustration is already pretty high here. And, you know, if our response is wait 5 years till we can do a big bond, you know, I think that ends up being more frustrating.
Member McCoy, and then Member Cook, and then Member Nanke.
Okay, as I read the Public Works recommendation, could, who's here, if Robert's here, somebody explain exactly what you're meaning. The way I read it was, if you give us more money, we have to go spend it on ADA preferred routes. That money goes there and it doesn't go to sidewalks like we're saying, but then if we do that, somehow it gets to the sidewalks. I didn't quite understand the explanation.
My comment regarding the arterials is, if you recall, we're having difficulty hiring staff, so the delivery of the service would likely be through a contract, and that contract right now is for routes, sidewalks along arterial routes.
Good evening, Mark Bechtel, Public Works Operations Manager. All this is correct. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the legislation requires that we prioritize our transit-oriented routes and ADA critical routes, which is essentially your arterial streets, your streets in business districts, schools, parks, transit, shopping, all that. Those are routes that tend to be our primary street routes, so arterials and collectors. And so any additional money that would be allocated for sidewalk repair would be prioritized towards those ADA critical routes in order for us to comply with the ADA legislation. The flying squad that you've heard about, the priority spot repair team, that is the team that is supposed to go out and just hit the worst spots anywhere in the city, regardless of ADA litigation. So that is the place where we can go out and we can start hitting neighborhood concerns, is with the flying squad, which is already funded. So it would just be more funding towards ADA compliance.
So, Mark, the flying, so you're saying, are you saying the flying squad, if we ever get it, is it hired? Are they hired yet?
We're in the process. We're trying to find people.
Okay, so we don't have, if they are, when and if they're hired, they're adequately funded to do what they need now?
That is correct.
For $2 million.
So you don't need any more funding for them to do that?
The $1 million that's currently proposed in the budget would cover the flying squad and the ADA critical route work that we're doing. This would, the $500,000 more that's being proposed in this motion would just be more repair work done by contractors on those transit and ADA critical routes.
And a lot of that ADA is the curb cuts and things like that in the corners?
It's curb cuts and sidewalk repair.
Okay.
Member Cook, and then Member Nanke, and then Member Hoy.
I'd like to yield to Member Hoy if I can. Can I do that?
Okay, Member Nanke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, after having gone back and forth a couple of times, decided that we were going to give property owners the sidewalks to repair. The amount of time, unless we take a couple of significant chunks out of bonds, doesn't really make any sense. It's like, well, we can't get to it, it's going to degrade all the way till then it's going to be a replacement. You can't bind a future council. We could always just look at giving everyone their sidewalks and making them fix them. Not probably a popular decision, but we could put together something like the Positive Protection Loan Program to where it's zero interest or whatever, and at least some folks would take advantage of that. Some would just fix their sidewalk. So I don't know. Thoughts to ponder.
Member Hoy.
So I just wanted to go back to what the mayor had to say, and I recognize that this is a drop in the bucket, but I do think it's a drop we need to make. I think we need to just, this money's there. I think that this is a critical issue, and I would hate to see us pass it by.
Member Bassett.
Thank you. I want to ask specifically about resources from the budget. There's unspecified $2.7 million under construction funds, item number 35. And as you're talking about resources for $500,000 or potentially $1 million. I want to ask, out of that 2.7, most of it's the GO bond funds. Does that include the 1.9 million of unspent reserve for the GO bonds too? It just, you have 2.7, and since this is listed as a high priority item, rather than leaving 2.7 unspecified, it would be nice to consider actually having it go towards a higher priority item than unspecified. So it's a two-part question there. What's in the 2.7 and is the 1.9 there? It's, I guess, book 2, construction funds is the tab, and it's item number 35 on page 98.
Hold on. Funds for projects.
Good evening. I'm Alicia Blaylock, Administration Division Manager in Public Works. And I need to ask for a clarification on that question. I believe what we're talking about on page 35 is the unspecified leftover money from the GO bond. That's correct. And I believe the 1.9 million is in Fund 155. So it's in a different fund. Is that correct? Kelly, is that what that's a reference to?
Are you speaking in regard to the, now we have staff asking each other questions?
Staff,
yes.
yeah. The wish list report, though, I think is 1.9 million.
The wish list item is for Fund 155.
Right,
That
so I
is
think
correct.
we're talking about two different funding sources in that question. Does that help clarify?
So are the uses for item number 35 on page 98, it says unspecified, are those not set?
That's correct. That money is being held in reserve right now until the other projects that are funded, the GO bond projects, are in completion. It is potential contingency funding to augment any project that goes over budget.
Okay, and
So I
then
think
in
we have-
addition, you have the 1.9 million that has not been recorded in this budget.
It's in a separate fund.
Okay, but it's not in any of our line
It is
items
not
for
included.
construction funds.
That's correct.
Okay, because I just want to say that in a handout that summarizes the 41 projects from the 2008 Streets and Bridges, sidewalk is listed, pedestrian, actually it says build sidewalks and bicycle lanes to schools and parks, $1.2 million. And what's happened is there was over $16 million of savings that ended up going into other projects. And when you just look at the list of 41 projects, you'd say, well, a balance of that should go towards pedestrian crossings or sidewalks and safe routes to school.
All right, Member Cook.
I think this is a really interesting handout, and I wanted to thank Member Bassett for bringing this up. I completely appreciate the ADA concerns and the prioritization that the city takes. I know there have been several lawsuits. Different organizations have had lawsuits, and we want to make sure that not only we're protecting ourselves, but more importantly, people of all abilities have the opportunity to move safely in their community. What concerns me as a resident, especially where I live, is quite frequently we have a sidewalk to nowhere, or we have a wonderful sidewalk on the busy 45-mile-an-hour street, and then no sidewalk in the neighborhood, or broken sidewalks, or piecemeal sidewalks. And quite frequently, that's because of the way that we develop. You know, my subdivision was built in the 60s. Things have expanded. There's newer development outside. They have sidewalks. I still don't. And I know a lot of that would be addressed in the strategic planning, in the comprehensive planning. But I just really appreciate bringing this up.
Okay. There is Member Taser. I keep calling you Taser.
Taser,
and
laser.
I apologize, but Kaiser.
My name autocorrects to laser all the time.
Taser, Kaiser? I don't know.
Taser. Whatever.
Shocking.
Still, don't call me. Don't call me late for dinner. Good. So sidewalks is something that comes up at nearly every single neighborhood association meeting I go to. And actually, at one point, actually several times now, there's been a person that comes up to me and says, I'm about to file a lawsuit with the city. And I'm sure everyone's heard that at their neighborhood associations. And I really do think at some point in time, somebody will. They're going to trip and fall, and they're going to blame the city. I do think it's ironic, though, that how we prioritize streets that cars travel on over sidewalks that people walk on. Because if there were streets like some of our sidewalks were, like I think actually over by the mayor's house, it's actually like a teeter-totter type. If our street was like that, there's no way we'd let that go on for years and years and years. Because people would complain, there would be accidents, but that's kind of what we do with sidewalks. For some reason, we value them less than the roads that we drive on. And in some ways, they're more important because it allows for, young children to walk on them and elderly residents and people with wheelchairs. So I think even just a little bit of money towards this just shows that yes, it's a big problem. This is not going to solve it all, but we are putting some resources towards it. And it would make me feel way more comfortable to go to the neighborhood association to say, we are doing something about it. We will look at a bond in the future, but right now we have nothing on the schedule for it. So until we do that, I would like to add more into sidewalks.
Member Cook.
So, not in disagreement, really excited about sidewalks, and as you mentioned, the people are pedestrians by design. My concern is, with this small amount and with the prioritization level, people won't be asking, why didn't you build a sidewalk here? They're going to be asking, why did you build a sidewalk there? And I'm not sure, based on the current prioritization level, if I can answer them that it was equitable and that it fell in line with what I know, things that are with the current strategic planning model. I think that the bond coming sooner rather than later would be appreciated. But right now, it would be repairs. It's something that's, of course, needed. There's a ton of repairs in our neighborhood, and I know all over town. It's something that I think we should look at.
Member McCoy.
I guess I asked Mr. Bechtel the question point blank, is this money going to go to what you want it to go to? And the answer is no, it's not.
Right.
So why vote for something that they're not going to spend the money on that you want it done? I mean, politically that's great, but practically speaking, until we get whatever that little task force the two guys are that we can't seem to find to hire to fix them, we're just giving them more money. This is going to go fix arterials and ADA requirements that the federal government's imposing on us.
Thanks, Fed.
Member Milton and then Member Ostick.
Yeah, I'll agree with Member McCoy. To me, it seemed like a $500,000 show and tell class, and I think we'd be given the wrong perception if we did that. So that's just my opinion.
Member Ostick.
So, from my opinion, it's that this is the way I would want it prioritized, because what I've heard from transit and others, that the reason people can't get around is they can't get to even the limited bus service we do have, people can't get to it. And one of the things that was brought up for the Transportation Committee was that one of the biggest expenses that the transit district has is ADA being able to move people in those rides are more expensive, and it's because they can't get to a normal bus through a sidewalk that's ADA compliant, and that would cut their expenses tremendously. So I feel like this would be actually very well targeted and helpful to our transit district, as well as to the people walking those sidewalks who aren't just trying to get to a bus, but. Yeah.
The judge in contempt.
And I guess my response, I don't disagree with you, Councilor Ossick. That wasn't what the spirit of the motion is at all. I mean, they want it in local neighborhoods in the places, whether it's in central area or older neighborhoods. That's what they want fixed. And so that was what the spirit of it is. I mean, if we want to make this specific, that it's going to go to clean up all the ADA stuff, we're still ending up with miles and miles of of needs, and we need a major influx and probably something on in one of the bonds moving forward. So this isn't going to accomplish what is desired to be accomplished, so I'm not sure why we'd vote for it.
It's time to call for the question and.
One more comment?
Sure.
I would just, to kind of, or Member McQuaid's, if these are happening on arterials and collectors, then great. You get those sidewalks fixed and ADA compliant. I think that's important because in my neighborhood, Ward 1, all the wards, those streets exist and around schools and bus stops and all of that. So this is not just about, little neighborhood streets. This is about those travel routes that are heavily used and need help. So I think it would be money well spent.
I want to ask a question.
Okay, Mayor Bennett.
I wanted to ask Mr. Bechtel a question then. How many of these transit stops would we fix with $500,000? Kind of where are we going here? I think when you're talking about these huge, complicated problems and then sort of, well, if we put a little in, we're solving any problem at all. I'm just curious.
Councilor, that's a little difficult to do since you threw a number at me and I now have to do math in my head here. If you're talking $35 a square foot of concrete repair, that get 7 times or 5 times 5 is 25 times 35. That's how much it is for a panel of concrete times however many panels of concrete you want to repair. So it really just depends on how many ramps. It can cost us several $100s to do each ramp. Each panel is probably $200, $250. So it just depends if there's tree roots in there or not, if there's other utilities or drainage issues. So I wish I could give you a number right off the bat, but it's $500,000. Sure, that'll put a dent in the problem. It won't fix the entire problem, but it'll put a dent.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I think it's time for to vote on the motion, and the motion, as I understand it, is to add an additional $500,000 to the budget for sidewalk repair, which will bring the total to $1.5 million. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Could I see hands, please? 8, so the motion fails. Next on the agenda is the Culture and Tourism Fund, and this is regarding funding the Capital City High School Golf Invitational. Do I have a motion?
I move staff recommendation.
Second by. All right. Thank you. Comments?
Affects my ward, but if you read it there, they had plenty of time to get this in. They didn't get it in time. They got the same opportunity next January.
Any other comments?
I have one.
Okay.
Mr. Manager, how was this budget, I got to be honest with you, I thought was a bit of a mess. And we were not funding a whole batch of, has that been fixed? There were a lot of cultural activities that weren't funded in favor of other activities. This was the specific, a specific amount, but there were just a whole bunch that applied and were pretty clearly mishandled by.
So you're referring to the TOT budget?
Yeah.
Yes, per earlier discussion and direction from the Budget Committee, staff will be going back and reviewing the TOT special event and TOT facility operator criteria. There was additional money added in the proposed budget to address some of the special events, and once the criteria have been reviewed and developed, if additional funding is justified, I'll be back to City Council with
okay,
that.
Great. Thank you very much.
With that recommendation.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis.
Member Anderson.
Thank you. Following up on Mayor Bennett's comments, I haven't done this yet, but I guess I'll do it now. I think we ought to have a work session on TOT because people have approached me Yeah, new people on the council. Todd is hard to understand. I have had meetings with various people from cultural events as opposed to heads in beds events, who say, hey, man, you know, this is supposed to be for cultural and tourism, and it looks like it's potentially getting weighted toward tourism. And I said, well, I'll ask for a work session. So even though I'm sorry to take the Budget Committee's time, I would request that we have a work session, and I don't know if we need a motion for that, but if I'm seeing people in the council nod their heads, so it would be a good idea in the near future if we could have a work session before a council meeting or on an alternate Monday where we could really get into TOT and how it works.
When you're ready to give us the numbers.
I hear nodding of heads, so looks like it's going to happen. All right, any other questions, comments on the motion? And the motion is to recommend staff recommendation. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I don't know, what's the pleasure? We could be wrapping up, or we could be here a while, depending on the next issue. Do you want to take a break or keep going? Okay. The next agenda item is policy discussion. So as we are getting close to the end, now would be the time to bring up policy issues.
One more time, can you repeat that?
It is policy discussion time.
Oh, boy.
So committee members discuss general policies and any other issues of concern.
Stop it.
Member Henderson.
I guess I'm fortunate I don't sit next to Member McCoy, because I'm sure he'd be kicking me under the table. I just appreciated the young ladies who came down tonight and talked about the swimming pool, and I will have to tell you that I am someone who used to swim at Walker Pool every day in the summer, because you know, it was a great pool. It's outdoor. That's a good thing. It was well used, but I understand the you know, the budget situation. But at some point, man, it would sure be nice to get that pool opened again. And I'm not making a wish list or making a policy decision or here, but I just really think outdoor pools are something that is very, very helpful to all ages. You know, you got a senior citizen who swims there, and you've got you know, the citizens of tomorrow who swim there too.
Mayor Bennett.
Thank you. I really agree. We've heard about Walker Pool for some time. We've had problems, well, over the years, closing, opening, closing, and same with Olinger. And then I looked at pictures of Leslie Pool, which were just appalling.
You know,
what a mess.
I mean,
that's one that's closed. But
South Salem high school is in my ward, and there's a significant movement there to open the pool there and do all sorts of other stuff, and that's even more impossible than Walker School because of the state of disrepair. But
well, I hope that during this strategic planning process, at some point we talk about youth recreation in the midst of that. I think we've got an opening through our sort of age-friendly city concept, but I really hope we get a chance to, because this pool thing, to be in a city with no swimming pools other than private or semi-private swimming pools, I think is real disappointing. That's something I wished we could do. But the problem is they're expensive, and the school district owns most of them, and working with them to get them open is its own special challenge. So I hope we can talk about it, though, a little bit, get a feel for that. I thought those young ladies did a really nice job and coming down and actually voicing. We did not get the Walker Pool lobby group we usually get each round that comes in. I'm sorry they're not here, because I think there continues to be an issue over there. I agree with you, Tom. It's good.
They've been replaced by the new guard. Member Bassett and then Member Cook.
Good. As we move from wrapping up the policy issues and then on to approving specific budgets, I just want to announce a potential conflict of interest on agenda items related to Marine Drive. My wife and I own property east of 2030 Wallace Road, specifically tax lots 56, 52, 87, which does not have frontage on Marine Drive but is nearby.
Member Hasler.
Yes, I was just wondering, last year it was brought up that they said we'd hear something this year from the state on taxation on the marijuana, and I have never heard a figure yet. Is the state reneging on that or what?
I've not heard that, but I did read just this week that no funds have been distributed outside the state, so either they're very slow at counting, or they like the feel of money, and they want to hold on to it until they have to give it out. But I know for one, the city of Salem is paying attention and is waiting for that check or checks.
We are paying attention, and we have heard a little bit. We are expecting to see something a little earlier next fiscal year than what we had originally anticipated. We thought the midpoint in the fiscal year, it might be a little bit earlier, and we think perhaps with the data that we've received that we may be actually, our receipts for the marijuana tax may be a bit higher than what we had anticipated as well.
And I'm curious, what is the new estimate, and does it include the 3%?
I think for the marijuana tax, our estimate was about $200,000 a year, and we're looking, I think, a little more towards $300,000 a year now.
Is that
a higher estimate? Yes.
Burning a hole in our pocket. On a sobering
all right.
Sobering center is perfect.
That's the sobering center.
Member Cook, did you have a comment, question?
Yes, just back to the pool and what the mayor was saying with recreational activities for youth and what Councilor Anderson was saying about all ages. The pools are a really prime example of points of interest and health within a community, but it's also a safety issue. When you don't know how to swim, it opens up a whole new dangerous, another opportunity to be injured or have a problem. Right, so I'm not saying if we have the pool, we can close the fire station, Councilor Hoy.
There's your point.
Learning how to swim is a safety issue as much as the sidewalks, as much as being able to walk. And while that burden may be too much for us as a city to be able to hold, I think it's really good to look at working with the school district, working with other communities, community partners to be able to do some kind of partnership. Maybe we can't do all the repairs, maybe we can't staff everything like we did with Olinger, like we did with Leslie, but it's important that we not stop the conversation, because Leslie Pool is a prime example of what happens when things fall into disrepair. You've got graffiti, you've got loitering, you've got potential that's going by and being wasted. So I think it's important we look at that. Every child that learns to swim has a better chance of making it to be an adult.
Member Kaiser.
Thank you. I was just curious if there's a way to, I want to capture all of the wish list items and the votes we kind of had tonight, and especially those ones that are really close, and maybe the ones that have happened over the previous like 2 or 3 years, so that we can look at those as we go through our strategic planning process and kind of bring them back to examine under that umbrella of things, because I don't want them to get lost.
Yeah.
Because there are things that I would have voted for, I just didn't, because we are undergoing this really big thing, and I think it's really important. But I would like to capture that so we can come back to it, because I think we should.
Which includes things that did not pass.
Yes, yes, correct.
And
specifically. Yes, specifically things that didn't pass. Yes.
So,
to review
Director
everything
Jacobs,
that's
that is,
passed
I
for the
see you
last 3
nodding your
years.
head, that's something you can do for us? Okay.
For a couple of sessions.
See if there's any patterns.
Member Nordyke.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you. The auditor position is one that I'm sorry did not move forward tonight, but I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of including a lot of the close votes for a variety of purposes. I can tell this body is working very hard, and we don't have all the resources we wish we had to achieve all the things that we want to do. So I think that's a fantastic idea, and I hope that the committee is supportive of it. Thank you.
Member Bassett.
So just a process question. If I want to express concern about some capital construction fund items, can I just put that on the record now or later? Because you're getting close to doing some votes.
Yeah, I would think now would be the time.
Okay, good. So I would like to flag one specifically in capital construction, project number 1 on page 90, $70,000 for the Salem River Crossing Environmental Impact Statement. And it's matching money to go to ODOT. I've expressed concern that the city manager might be ready to address is whether or not there should be an ODOT intergovernmental agreement in order for that to happen.
Member Bassett, yes, I'll be responding to your earlier questions. To answer your question this evening, no, an intergovernmental agreement is unnecessary.
Any other questions, comments? Member Bergman.
Just a general policy. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a general policy. I want to talk just briefly about the data we review as a committee, and I spoke briefly with Kelly about this, but I wanted to throw it out on our radar. I've been on a few different budget committees at the state level, and one of the key pieces of data we look at on an annual or biannual basis is year-to-date expenditures, because it helps mitigate the risk that people will try to spend down their budget so that they can maintain current service level. So I don't want to jump too far into the weeds, but generally what we're being provided with is the adopted budget from the prior year, as well as the proposed budget for this current year. Even if we had the actuals from 16 and 17, that would be an improvement. If we had year-to-date for 16, 17, that would be an improvement. So when we're looking at the data, I wanted to throw that out on your radar because it might help our decision-making going forward.
And Ms. Jacobs, I would assume that's something that could be incorporated in the reports. Thank you. All right, good idea. Anything else, Member Bassett?
Yeah, this is the last one on my list, so I appreciate it, and I'm being brief with these. So I just want to state that that with the item number 3 on page 90, I want to ask just to clarify, and I've prepared the city manager on this question: is the $3.6 million that is proposed to be approved here, is that included with the intent of funding a first phase of the Salem alternative?
Your page, book 2,
page 90, item number 3.
First phase. There isn't even any EIS.
I think so too.
So since there isn't an immediate response on that, I just want to state that I'll be voting for the overall capital funds budget, but I want to state opposition to items number 1 and 3.
Member Anderson.
I think I can respond to Member Bassett's concern on number 3, because I had that concern too, and I had a long meeting with Director Fernandez where my understanding is whether a new bridge comes in or not, the current proposal, if funded, would be no different with a bridge in or a bridge out. So none of that funding there is affected one way or the other. The real issue, I think, was there was some thought that the 80-foot right-of-way would have to go all the way down Marine Drive and include there, but it's clear that the only 80-foot right-of-way is where the bridge would come into Marine Drive, not on the south end of Marine Drive.
You are correct on both.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Ms. Jacobs, if you could help me come to the podium and kind of go over, this is especially for the benefit of the new folks on the Budget Committee and me. Could you kind of go over the next items one by one and lead us to our vote?
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. So item 8 in your packet is approval of the city's tax levies. And this is one of the primary functions of the Budget Committee, to approve the tax levies for the City of Salem and for the Urban Renewal Agency. You'll be looking at that a little bit later in your agenda, so right now we're just focusing on the City of Salem. So what you have is the permanent tax rate that you're approving, and that is the full permanent tax rate, the 5.8315 per thousand for the general fund operations. And then you will also approve the general obligation bond debt levy of $14.12 million.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion for passage of the agenda item.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, any comments, questions?
Like our neighbor did us up.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Okay, number 9.
Thank you. Item 9 in your agenda is a staff report that describes the proposed budget, and the attachment to that staff report, for the second page, is the budget as it has been amended through errata sheets 1 and 4 during this process. What it does not include are the changes that occurred this evening. So in the motion, you'll need to move the recommendation of the budget with the amendments that were made this evening.
Okay. And I entertain a motion to do so.
I move the budgets with the recommendations made this evening.
Second.
And the second, Member Cook. Questions? Comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All right, number 10.
So now you are the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee.
I love those guys.
And we are asking you to approve the, and this is item 10, we're asking you to approve the tax levy for the Urban Renewal Agency and all of the urban renewal areas.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second. Questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And finally, number
Item 11 is the Urban Renewal Agency budget, and it has not been changed since you first reviewed the budget at the beginning of, near the beginning of this process or early in this process. So there are no amendments this evening to this budget.
I move the staff recommendation.
Seconded by Member Anderson. All those in questions? Member Bassett.
Just a comment that I would ask the city manager in the future budget documents to include a little more information on criteria for approval of projects. There was some concerns expressed about given projects that the Urban Renewal Agency has approved, and I would just like to, in the future, have more information about what are the criteria for the projects and how they're applied.
Okay.
Had a majority of votes.
Member Cook?
I just wanted to comment that this is a wonderful handout provided by the Urban Renewal Agency. Really thorough, very nice charts. And also financial summary as well. Really appreciated, thank you. Picture is 1,000 words.
Very good. I agree. Okay. I don't see anybody else. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Finally, other business. The next spot for the budget is a public hearing, so we'll have an opportunity to hear from the public on the entire budgets, both of them. That will be June 12th. Member Colway.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to say farewell. Are you done? Sorry.
Yeah, I could be done.
All right. So I want to say thank you to my fellow Budget Committee members. I think there's only 2 people left from the original team of 18, what was then Councillor Bennett and Councillor Nanke. So thank you for suggesting I put my name in, Mayor. It was quite a ride. I'm still not half as smart as Kelly. I don't know how she does it. She's quite the wizard. Thank you for being so patient, especially when I sat up there in 2014, I believe. That is hard work. You make it look so cool and easy, but I was sweating. And so thank you for the opportunity to let me serve with you folks. And I want to say to all the city staff that I've met over the last 7 years, I'm very impressed with your expertise and your dedication. And and just the integrity and the willingness to serve, I really feel like I'm in good hands as a citizen. And I love the city more now that I'm at the end of this than I did at the beginning, because I've seen the commitment and the dedication, and you guys make it easy to be proud to be a Salemite. So thank you to all the staff, thank you fellow committee members, and we'll see what mischief I can cause next.
Mr. Member Bailey.
Okay, my turn. I would echo that totally. I enjoy this process, as odd as that may be, and I've really appreciated the work of the staff and the good discussion, good faith discussions around the table here with everybody. We don't always agree, and that's the way it should be. And I do feel, and I would say to the public watching this proceeding, I think the city of Salem's in good shape, and that's a testimony to some really hard decisions that were made over the last few years about the budget and the fact that we didn't go over the cliff. And there was a real cliff to be gone over, too. So make no mistake about it. Nobody ever gets anything they want in this life, and that includes on this budget committee, but I think we've done just about as good as we can, and it's been an honor to serve. Thank you.
I'm going to take the chair's privilege and tell you how proud I am of the folks on this committee. It is no secret that we have a diversity of opinion and goals and desires, but yet we have the ability to sit and talk and voice our opinions in a very professional manner, and I quite frankly could not be prouder. We are adjourned.
There's cake, is there not?